Welcome to my wood shop in Stratford, Vermont. I'm going to talk a little about soapstone, its properties and workability, and then I'll show you how to handle it on a lathe and actually make product on a wood lathe. This is one of the most useful soapstone tools you can have. It's just a block about 1 inch by 8 by 8, and you put it on a burner, a gas burner, or in an oven, or a wood stove, and it has a property where it soaks up heat more than most anything else. It drinks it up and then emits it over a long period. This I put a handle on so you can put it on the stove, pick it up without burning yourself. You get it up, put it on a little gas flame or wood stove and get up to about 400 degrees. You can spatter some water on it, and if it sits there and boils, it's not hot enough. But if it instantly turns to steam, you're there. Then wrap it in a towel. If the towel scorches, you got it too hot, so you'll let it cool a little. Wrap it up in a towel and stick it in the foot of your bed next to your feet. And on a cold night, it will still be warm in the morning, and so will your feet. If there's two of you, there'll be a lot of competition for that real estate around this stone, so you better do two. Or if there are three of you, you better make 3 stones. Also, you can put it on your table under a hot dish, and it'll keep that dish hot during the whole meal. Another item you can make with soapstone is a pen. This guy is made using the same tools as you do use for a wooden pen. Now you've probably seen some of the catalogs with 50 or 100 different pen blanks made of all kinds of resins. Some of them are sometimes wood, coffee beans, sunflower seeds, you name it, but you never find a soapstone one. You cut the blanks the same way, drill the holes the same way. I'd say cut the blanks large because the drilling can tend to break them out. After the hole's drilled, then bring the blank down to size on a belt sander. This is soapstone rolling pin, French style rolling pin. Now, if you know how to make pastry, you know you have to keep the pie crust cold. That pie dough depends on being cold to come out right. And if you put a warm rolling pin on it out of the drawer, it isn't going to stay warm. But you put this guy in the freezer, and I guarantee you it'll be cold, and so will your hands. Put it in the freezer an hour before or 2 hours before you make your pie, and use that to roll the crust. And nothing compares with it. In other words, it's a heat sink, but it's like a cold sink too. So soapstone is actually talc that's been metamorphosed under high pressures. And that softness enables you to cut it with regular tools. Hand saw, band saw, twist drills. Now, if you're going to use it on a table saw, I'd recommend carbide or even diamond. Soapstone has tiny inclusions, and they are made of pyrite many times. Pyrite is fool's gold, so you'll get these little gold specks in there. Probably can't see it. But those guys are harder than the rest of the soapstone, and they'll dull your tools. And as far as bandsawing is concerned, I keep one blade that I use only for soapstone. Now, what I'm going to do is make one of these rolling pins here in front of the camera. And to start with, I've got to cut it on these lines. So, we'll fire up this little bandsaw and see if we can get it to cut. I've drawn the lines, saw is ready to go. Now, after a few cuts, enough cutting of soapstone, you'll notice it won't cut as well because the blade gets duller and duller. This is a 17-foot blade, so I get a lot of teeth to work with. Cutting off the ends. This spark is hitting a piece of that pyrite. At this point, before you put it on the lathe, you want to check it very carefully for cracks. You don't want it coming apart on the lathe. And you want to wear good face protection regardless. So that's a pretty nice clean cut. And the ends is going to be a short rolling pin. Small pies. The next thing I do is I'll wrap some duct tape around the end. In this case, I'm using a 4-jawed chuck. And this duct tape distributes the force of the chuck so that it doesn't put too much pressure in any one point. Let's find the lathe here. Try to get it as centered as you can. I'm using a live cup center here with a little pin in the middle of it. Close the chuck firmly, but not really reefing down on it. And now I'm going to see how centered it is by how far it clears the corners on a tool rest. That is pretty good. Now, the first thing I like to do is take down the corners with a belt sander. This is to minimize the impacts. The impacts are what loosen the chucks. Every time it hits a corner, there's an impact. And lots of impacts when this thing is spinning. So I bring down in about 30-45 seconds on each corner. You can take them down, take a lot of stone off. I'm holding it in position with the tool rest so it doesn't spin under the belt sander. Again, I'm looking closely to make sure there are no cracks in this thing that are going to let the stone go flying into pieces while it's spinning. Last one. That's pretty good. Sort of looks octagonal. I'm going to zoom in a little here so you can see the turning. Now, what we don't do is use sharpened tools. We use scrapers only, and also tools that take a very, very small cut. This is what I'm using at this point. A little carbide scraper tip. Keep sharp eye on this tailstock. It can loosen. Always keep checking it for looseness, because this point can wallow out due to the impacts or just the torque. And I recommend good head protection. I haven't been hit by a rock yet, but now I've got a full face shield on. Basically, you just feed it in. There's no grain to worry about. You can go uphill or down. I find pointing it down works best, tilting it a little to one side, the side you're moving towards. It's not too dusty. The dust is so heavy it mostly just drops on the floor. I tend not to run it much over 1200 RPMs. I'm going to shut you down and give it a rest so you come back when I've got this down to the final shape I'm looking for. The next step is smooth it up. Again, I use scrapers. This is a Sorby scraper. It's about 1/4 inch thick. And if I put a burr on it, it'll cut really nicely for about 15 seconds. I want to get those grooves out from that first scraping tool. You will just shovel off the wood, shovel off the stone. Come in a little closer. A little closer still. I'm looking closely for balance. Must be symmetric. Your eye can tell you where there are problems, but so can your hand. You can feel things you can't see. Actually looks shinier now that I've sharpened it. Remember, no cutting tools, only scrapers. This is ready for sanding. Sandpaper really hogs the material off very fast. You're going to start with an 80 grit. And adjust mask. I'm still not in it. See how that stone comes off. I'm going to 120. Now 220. Feels pretty good. Don't feel any grooves. Now over some 320. Do the 400 with this. And the last one I use is a 600 grit. I like to polish it with wood chips towards the end. It starts to get some light off it after the 600. And there's one place I use cutting tools. I put a little trim ring near the end, just for looks. Get this score. Next thing I use is some of this polish called Scratch Free. It's got some abrasives in it and oils. Oils help seal it. And the abrasives polish it even more. Let's see. That looks a little better. So soapstone is soft. You can scratch it with a fingernail. So I think it deserves a little protection in the form of like a lacquer or a varnish or whatever you like, or just nothing. But first, I'm going to take off the ends. Now, where do you get soapstone? I've talked about that. I find one of the best sorts is retired sinks, kitchen sinks. Usually antiques, but they still make them. Also, soapstone stoves. Look in salvage yards, or put an ad in the classifieds looking for a soapstone sink and take it apart. It's hard to get soapstone much more than 2 inches thick. But with the 1-inch variety, you can make those handles for corkscrews or bottle stoppers, which would be very nice in soapstone. So we're going to let that this is lacquer I've put on it. I'll let that dry, and then I have to smooth up the ends that I just bandsawed off with sandpaper and lacquer those, and we're done. So don't hesitate to experiment. Here are some samples. These guys would be pretty easy to turn, little bottle stoppers, or cut them up for try some pens. But chunks like this will be a little more expensive. A 3-inch thick by 6 by 6 would run about $45 from Vermont Soapstone, and that's not too far from me here in Stratford, Vermont. And they have a good scrap pile where you can get about all the 1-inch that you want. So give it a go, and thanks for watching.